the city. Politics, progress, game boards, objects viewed like pawns till we change up our mindset. The value of the dollars at the center of this conflict. Their lives only matter if they serve to make a profit. But if a midget sees further on the shoulders of the giant, then we should see further than the tyrant and build a future within alliance where success is our science in the quest to go higher. It's the heart of the city.
Welcome home. This is Kendall Chase, and I'm your host, and this is HeartCity TV. Well, it's been some time since we've been on air, but we are so ready to jump in and bring you the information that you need. Today's show topic is so important. It is so relevant. It is so timely. What's going on? Solving the pandemic of violence. We spent the last two and a half years talking about pandemics. And when we hear that word, we now have made it synonymous with COVID. But what about all the other things that are affecting our community? And right now in Philadelphia, we have been plagued with recent streaks of violence across our city and nationwide. It's time for a drastic change, one with heavy-handed action. That's what many people are saying. And this Monday, we just had a recent shooting of 2 police officers on the Parkway in Philadelphia. Plus, we had our Mayor Jim Kenney, his recent statement suggesting he no longer desires to be the mayor. And I think it's becoming very clear everyone is at their wits' end. Our guests tonight, they have been on the front line in so many ways, legislatively, in executive branches and offices, and very much so right on the front lines in the community. Tonight, you'll hear from our former Philadelphia District Attorney, Seth Williams. He has been very vocal about what needs to occur in our communities to help our city change the climate of violence. But before we get started with all of that great content and have our amazing guests today, we have to begin with prayer. And so I'm going to bring to our screen our favorite, Mr. Malik Boyd. Malik Boyd is our former host. He is our executive producer and founder of HeartCity TV and Heart of the City Radio. Mm-hmm. But for many that may not know, he is an amazing minister. And he is just a powerful, powerful intercessor of prayer. And so, Malik, I'm welcoming you back home. This is not a welcome home, but welcome back home.
Yeah, back in the living room. You know,
back in the living room, bro.
I gotta get one off, Kendall. You know, wake up, world. But honestly, you know, it's amazing. It's timely, right? Like in the middle of everything that we're dealing with, it's very clear that there's a lot going on, and everybody, like you said, is at wit's end. I mean, Kenny said what he said, and from a political perspective, it was absolute. It was a death blow to a trajectory, right? To a legislative career in that space. One would say, you know, he's a lame duck mayor, meaning, you know, a lot of his legislative power has been kind of pulled towards the end of the term. Right. But I mean, he was speaking from the heart. He was done. He was done. Get your kids. Like, what's up?
He's sick and tired. He's sick and tired.
You know who the shooters are. Like, we all kind of have ideas in our own respective communities. And look, it's a lot on the mayor. Every day you deal with not just the issues in your community and your neighborhood, but he's dealing with every last shooting, every scenario. But yes, we do expect our executive officer, our chief executive officer, to bring hope.
And I think that's the interesting thing about this. You know, sometimes we put people in positions of power and positions of leadership on this high pedestal, like they can't get to their wits' end, right?
Yeah, indeed.
But there are times when we need our leaders, even when they're at their wits' end, to kind of suck it up and help pull us through and not show us, right? And where's the balance for that for him?
It's a clarion call, right? For us, less of him, but more of us, right? So what bandwidth do we give our electeds and allow them to be human.
To be human.
You know, at the same time, we do need answers. We do need solutions, right? I saw in the comments, I won't reflect on whose thread, but, you know, individuals saying, well, the next set of promise breakers are ready to come in and do their job, right? And so it's clear that people have this real disdain for those who promise and don't bring a solution. And so, yes, the populace is tired of endless and hopeless promises, ones that don't have teeth in them. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and 3 years later, we're still in the same place or worse.
In the same spots, yeah.
At the same time, you know, do we give enough bandwidth for a guy to say, listen, I've done all I can, and still in the midst of this, we're dealing with some tumultuous times, right? Yeah. I mean, these aren't they didn't just shoot two other individuals that they had beef with on the Parkway. They shot two officers.
They shot a police officer.
Yeah.
They shot a sheriff officer from the county. And then they could have been planning a funeral for one because the bullet was lodged in the helmet or the hat of, I believe, a third officer.
Real crazy. Now, mind you, back in the day when I was growing up some years ago, you know, we used to, when you drove past a church, you turned the music down. When you drove past a graveyard, you kind of turned the music down. You knew if there was beef, you didn't do it when older women and elderly senior citizens were out on the street.
It was a safe zone. There was areas that was off limits.
These dudes went to the July 4th celebration and let off shots. You know,
Super Sunday used to be on the Parkway. The 4th of July was on the Parkway. I mean, we could go on and on about all the celebrations that now many are afraid to go to. I mean, a Doomsday returned this year, and many talked about how afraid they were to go to a beloved celebration of a Doomsday. Like, we missed a Doomsday.
It's really crazy. Like, and so we have to make a determination. And I know you have a heavy weight on your shoulders as host to kind of guide us through this, because look, you know, there are many that are saying, take all the guns and take them away. We're irresponsible in our care of guns, which, you know, is a whole nother element. That Second Amendment argument is something special in its own right. And many of us want to remain, you know, with the ability to be able to have and the right to bear arms and have ourselves protected, you know, away from this violence. But then there's this other piece that says, you know, are we willing to stand up and just begin to I don't want to say use the word snitch, but begin to correct our community? We know those who are doing this work, right? And so how do we begin to protect those, like the guests that you have on the show? They're doing the work in the community, that are grinding, but they need the help. They need the support. They need the resource to be able to do that, right? And then there's this big conversation around, you know, who are we funding in the city, right? Like,
and I'm gonna be honest, we may not even get there today. We may not even get there today. Not that we're not going to go there on Heart City, but we may not get there.
Are you leaking out the fact that there may be a series? Is that the hint that you're dropping right now?
I mean, I'm talking to my executive producer.
You're so funny. Yeah.
All I'm saying is, you know, to your point, there's so many layers to this that we're dealing with, right? And you said wake up world, that you took it back, right? Old school. But every time for all those years when you were hosting, you would say wake up world, I heard Teddy Pendergrass in the back of my head. Wake up everybody.
No more sleeping in bed.
No more sleeping in bed. Like, all those things. It's time for everyone in their lane to wake up and do their part. Every single person.
Aronde McLean he's on the Facebook page. I love that brother. It's always good to see my frat. And he's saying, look, you know, we're funding the wrong people. We've got to follow up on the funds that we've delved out, you know, but then there's also responsibility in the community. And there's so many spaces. Nobody's going to come. And I hope No one is expecting for one person or one entity to come with a 10-point agenda that solves the issue. It is not how that works, right? Cultural change happens in every nook and cranny across the city, community, country. Everybody has their ability to add value to it. And you have an action-packed show with some folk who have some real insight, perspective, and put some elbow grease in this thing. So I'm excited.
They put some real elbow grease in it, and I'm excited. Like, for example, Jamal Johnson is up right after you, and I'm going to be honest with you. He has been laying it plain and simple, clear as it can be on his social media page. He follows it up, and we're going to talk about all the things that he's doing, but he is calling for activation, and he is not calling for activation just on a government level, executive or legislative level, but also in the community. And he digs in, and I'm excited to hear him, because I believe that truly this is a multi-layered issue. You know, this is something where we all have to have our moment and our place of activation. And where does that lie? And, you know, we have to take the hard truth is we all have to do a little bit more, because what we're doing isn't enough. It isn't enough.
OG Jamal is going to break it down. I hope the listening audience is ready.
They better. So before we get to OG Jamal Johnson, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to have you pray, because listen, our foundation has always been rooted that prayer is where we begin, and then we go and we do the works. We are strong and faithful, but we go and we work. So before we get into that work today, I'm going to need you to offer that prayer for our city.
Absolutely. Heavenly Father, we come before you just to say thank you, recognizing that this day is not promised. We offer it back to you from whence it came. We thank you for all that you are in our lives. We are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but through you, perfection is offered to us. And so we ask you to be with us now. You know the solutions. You are the solution. Help us craft it, bring it into reality. Help us to work together and not separate. Allow us to be on your agenda and not our own. We recognize that leaders do not always have the solutions, but working together, we can find the solution. And so allow us to be cohesive in our efforts. Allow us to protect those who go on the front line, not just with the criticisms of the day, not just with the social media rants and statements, but allow us to actually put in the work that brings about true change. It is said, we are the ones that we've been waiting for, but you are the one that activates us in that space. And so we lean on you now to give us all that we need to be what we are all looking and seeking for in this day, this season, in this moment. Bless the show, bless the host, bless the guests who will bring perspective, solutions, dialogue, and even discourse, knowing that all of it brings about change. Allow us to have open eyes, open ears, and open hearts. And at the end of this, recognize that we are all one people. And protecting this life is of utmost importance. Ensuring that our children have a great and safe future is of utmost importance. And we'll continue to give your name the honor and the praise. Let all of God's people say amen.
Amen. Thank you. They don't get to see this side of you very often, but I thank you. I thank you for not just sharing your wisdom and your insight, but also sharing the words that God has laid on your heart. I believe that our people and our communities need that just as well during this time.
I appreciate you. Listen, I'm excited. Welcome back.
Let's go.
Right?
Welcome back.
The seat is nice and warm. And so I'm excited about what you're going to bring to the table. I know God is going to use you in the show and the guests in a mighty way.
In a mighty way. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go to a commercial. After our commercial, we are going to be back with Brother Jamal Johnson. This community activist is on fire for his community. On the other side of this commercial, this is HeartCity TV, and I'm Kendall Chase.
hop on.
Good morning.
It's the NBA 75th. All right, guys. We're getting ready to take a stroll down memory lane. Don't get left behind. It's all about the brotherhood here.
Good morning, neighbor. Top of the morning.
But also,
this is my house.
Claiming what's rightfully yours.
This is my house.
Hey, seatbelts on, seatbelts.
Hey, Spider!
What's up, Russ? Take notes, kids. Flyers dressed in the NBA. Around here, it's never too late to learn a new trick.
What you want to do is get it off your fingertips.
From the sky hook.
Gracias, sir.
All the way to the alley-oop.
Oh, throw it down, big man. Good pass, bro.
That was an instant classic. This community right here stretches to every corner of the globe.
The globe doesn't have corners.
You know what I mean.
Big job, Bob.
We've come a long way from the peach basket.
My bad.
Not again.
Where you think you're going?
Gary.
You can't get by me.
They call him the glove. This is what he does. Even nicknames take on a life of their own. No.
Somebody call the doctor?
Is that who I think it is?
This league is full of game changers. When it comes to legends, the NBA's got more than its fair share.
And I ain't finished yet.
That's what I like to hear. Some things are bigger than basketball. Now, we've seen kids turn into kings and give it all back to the next generation. There's a piece of this game for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, or... yeah, that too. Your move. Now, that's just fun. Nice ride, Zeke. Hello. Fit is clean. It's been 75 seasons and counting. One thing's for certain.
This game just keeps getting greater.
Game don't stop. It won't stop.
I said no.
Please?
This is HeartCity TV, and I'm your host, Kendall Chase. What's going on? Solving the pandemic of violence. Our next guest is Mr. Jamal Johnson. Mr. Jamal Johnson is a retired U.S. Marine. He is a community activist, and he puts himself right on the front lines. You may recognize him from just this weekend. He could be seen right on Market Street protesting, stating or declaring just what Philadelphia feels like to him, violent, and a warning he issued to our community. It is dangerous to be in the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jamal Johnson.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Could be better. We can do something about this problem. It'd be much better.
I tell all those that watch the show, when you see a guest in a car while they are on the show, that means they have been working right up until show time. And that is what I know about you, that you are always grinding. You are always out in our streets doing what needs to be done to make sure everyone knows what is really going on. Mr. Johnson, I want you to first start, though, with sharing just a little bit about your past work.
Well, I started off actually getting involved in some of the city issues at the time with the police brutality that was happening back in 2017. Young man, David Jones, was killed by a police officer. And so I had formed up a march, which this is the 6th year, in which I marched to D.C. to speak with the Congressional Black Caucus about ways in which we can hopefully minimize that problem. About two or 3 years later, the gun violence in Philadelphia was, needless to say, getting extremely out of hand at that time. And it wasn't even as bad as it is now. Right. And so I added that to my agenda for the march. But also, when I returned back home, I started to go around the city with signs on front and back asking us to stop killing us. and also to try to encourage the community to get involved so we could reduce some of these killings. As about, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. About last year, or the year before last, the Philadelphia City Council came out with a resolution for Mayor Kenney, asking him to address some issues about gun violence. He refused to acknowledge the resolution. He would not meet with them about the issues. I, in turn, took to protesting at his home and at City Hall. But then I took the last resort and went on a hunger strike in January of last year outside of City Hall. After about a month, almost a month, he came out, made some promises, which he didn't keep. And we went forward trying to solve this gun problem. Needless to say, it has gotten much worse. So this year, I took a march to Governor Wolf's house up in Mount Wolf, Pennsylvania. And I made the appeal to him to help us out, because I didn't feel, and I still don't feel, Mayor Kenney's heart is in this. And because his heart isn't in it, it's not getting taken care of the way it should on that level. The state level assured me that they were trying to make some kind of actions coupled with the actions of the Philadelphia Police Department to see if we could probably address some of this crime, especially the homicides. And since then, myself and others have gone to, I would say, almost every homicide in the city of Philadelphia. We go there, we protest, and we also rally the community to come out, get involved, try to take back our communities, try to show the youth that are out there who may be misled that this is not the way they have to do things. And we just continue to march forward to try to address this gun violence. Recently, for the 4th of July, I and others went out to the historical sites of Philadelphia to warn our visitors what our city will not warn us about, which is that Philadelphia is dangerous. And to tell them that visiting Philadelphia may be hazardous to their safety due to the increased gun violence. And we did this for 3 days up until the 4th of July, at which time we trailed the 4th of July Independence Day parade in Philadelphia to let the onlookers there know the same thing. Unfortunately, sad events occurred after that.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about those sad events because we had been discussing here at Heart City how important it was to have this conversation and what direction would be best for us. And then on July 4th, at one of our beloved events, Welcome America, we had 2 officers shot. And so before we jump into that, we're going to take this back to a session or that we have here at Heart City. It's called our EKGs. And I'm going to ask you to be my EKG guest to join in with me, and let's dissect this story and help our audience understand what is going on and how we as a community can really step up and step in and be the gap fillers that we need at this time. Are you ready for the EKGs?
Yes.
It's EKG time.
This is the EKG, the part of the show where we place America front and center on the monitors of the American people. We will look for irregularities in the heartbeat, offer solutions on the issues we find in order to make America healthy once again. So fire up the machine. Let's start the EKG.
This week has been much like every other week. We have seen violence across not just the city of Philadelphia, but across the country. But we're seeing an uptick of violence in large events and spaces where more than one person could be hurt, not targeted events or targeted gun violence. And so our article for today is about the 2 cops that were shot during Philadelphia's Welcome America event. So we had 2 cops shot during the Philly July 4th fireworks. They were ID, and the Philadelphia Federation of Fraternal Federation of Police, the FOP, they are issuing a $20,000 reward for the arrest of these 2 individuals or those involved. We're not even sure how many. We know that 2 police officers, at least 1 Philadelphia police officer, was injured. We know that an officer in the county, from the county that was out there to support our event, was injured. And at this time, we're grateful that their injuries were minor and that they were able to be treated and released. We know that at least one officer had a bullet lodged in his helmet or hat, and that's the only thing that saved him from it not being his death and us planning a funeral. And this is just one of many, many events that has seen this in Philadelphia. What is the first thing that Philadelphia needs to do, in your opinion, Mr. Johnson?
Bring in the National Guard.
And you've been talking about this quite a bit on your social media. Tell our audience, why do you believe the National Guard would be of benefit to our city at this time?
Before I started pleading for the National Guard, I pled to the community, and I still plead to the community, that we have to be the first line of defense for our women, our children, our elderly. If we're not going to be, somebody has to be. The police are understaffed. Someone has to be on these grounds as a deterrent to these people who are running around here recklessly shooting and killing people. And as far as I'm concerned, the National Guard is a deterrent. We do not want them to become law and order for Philadelphia, but we need something on the street that at least resembles law and order on a consistent basis, and that's why I call for the National Guard.
And many will argue that that is opening a door to a police state, for our city. And you began your activism, protesting and bringing attention to violence from officers against our community. How do we find balance in that and asking for the National Guard, but still not wanting to have some sense of control?
I think we bring balance in by making it unnecessary to have the National Guard. And so we have to start being the eyes and ears of our community. We have to be a presence in our community to our children, to our women, to our elderly. And until we do that, we can't have the streets empty except for those who choose to cause murder and mayhem. We have to have some order on our streets. And as far as the police brutality issue, I still feel the same way about that. But at the same time, I think that if we were to band together and show the love and concern for our community and those youth who we think are wrecking our neighborhoods, I think we could have some effect on this. But we're not going to find out until we do that.
Right. I asked you that question because I wanted our audience to understand that there's balance in this view that you have. When we talked about this prior to the show, you were very passionate about it. And I've seen you have some very strong opinions and challenge individuals. You call for activation often of our community. How do we as a community, how does the everyday person activate?
They walk out their front door, they knock on their neighbor's door and ask them to do the same thing. They congregate. They do what they did before this chaos descended upon our city. They allow their children to play and monitor their children with men and women, not just women and their children. And we just have to be active in our communities. We have to show some sense of responsibility to our communities. And those of us who say that we are taking up the task of addressing gun violence, we can't just do it in isolated areas inside where people don't see us. Our people have to see that we are actually acting on this problem so that they can have a vision that it can be taken care of. And until we do that, I think we're just running around chasing our tail, even though, please let me say, there are many people doing great things in Philadelphia to address this problem. But I don't think that people who are scared are not only not seeing it, but some people don't even think it exists.
Yeah. You're talking about balance. You're talking about the first step that we need to get to the place to even receive the help. Being able to have the safe corridor to where our help is. And that makes a lot of sense. Mr. Jamal, how can our audience, if they wanted to join in with you and support your work or learn more about how they can implement something similar in their community, how do they reach out and connect with you?
Well, my number one way is through Facebook. I'm not necessarily a part of an organization that I represent on this issue. I'm just one concerned citizen. I join and band with other concerned citizens, and we're just trying to address this problem. And my Facebook page is Jamal Johnson, SKU, which stands for Stop Killing Us. And I'm just saying to everybody, we have got to stop us from killing us first. And then as a city, we have to come together to stop everyone else from killing us.
I appreciate your time today. I thank you so very much for coming out. I know how important this work is to you. And so I am grateful that you even took a little bit of your time today to share with our audience. And I thank you most importantly for being on the front line, for being that concerned citizen that shows us all how we can be activated, concerned citizens. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're going to have a commercial. This will be the last one for the day. But on the other side of that commercial, we have Mr. Randy Robinson. I heard that he is Philadelphia's favorite Republican. And we also have former Philadelphia DA, Mr. Seth Williams. This is Heart City TV, and I'm Kendall Chase. We'll see you on the other side of this commercial.
Those fries you've been craving. I'm hot and I'm steamy. And oh man, do I smell delicious. I'm calling your name. Oh, Doug. Doug. And if you don't have the right auto insurance coverage, paying for these repairs may be tough to swallow.
Get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem for a whole lot less.
This is Heart City TV, and I'm your host, Kendall Chase. This has been a great first show back after a long break already. I have been blessed to be in the presence of individuals that really know what they're talking about. They're sharing their gems. And it's important that we take the time to listen to them. We have in our chat on Facebook, Mr. Arande McLean. Malik spoke up from earlier. He said to us, and Mr. Jamal, I hope that you hear this. I salute you, Jamal. Thanks for protecting our city. But on the other side, there's things that we need to do legislatively, and there's things that we need to be holding those in positions in both our criminal justice system, in our legislative executive offices that are held, as Malik called it, our CEO of our city, our mayor. And the next two individuals on the show can really help us understand how we can be a part of that. Help us understand what is happening. I'm excited to have with us Philadelphia's favorite Republican, Mr. Randy Robinson, and Mr. Seth Williams, the former Philadelphia District Attorney. I am excited to have you two gentlemen. Thank you so very much for coming.
How are you?
Well, thank you for having us.
I'm wonderful. Seth, your smile is amazing. It brings me some joy today.
Amen.
Amen. And Mr. Robinson, you are Philadelphia. See, ever since you told me that line, you don't understand. I have my son walking around saying that line here in our home.
Good.
It resonated with me because I think there's something to be said about being a favorite. When you're a favorite, that means you're out there doing some work. That means people know who you are and what you are doing. There's a reason to be a favorite. It's not just a title. It comes with some work. Share with our audience what got you to that position that people could legitimately say, yeah, he's our favorite. He's our favorite.
First of all, thank you for having me on, and particularly with my dear good brother Seth Williams, and
Yes.
whom I've known over a long time. But you know, I'm not sure if I'm actually favorite, but I that's a self moniker that I've created. Well, you know. But more seriously, the fact of the matter is that how it got me there is how everybody has arrived at this podium of seriousness about concern for the Black community. Mm-hmm. It's been growing up as an African American in this city, facing the trials and tribulations of African Americans do for the existence not only in this country but particularly in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I wear my politics, and I tell people I see my politics through the lens of a Black man, not my Blackness through the lens of a Politico. So I think that approach to it has allowed people to, you know, I'm not really certain why there's an additional barrier to relationship building when they realize that you're not a member of the Democratic Party. It's like, I'm like, you're an alien. I'm like, no. But it, well, and because of that distinction, it has afforded me people's interest. Like, well, who is he? What was he talking about? Why is he here? Mm-hmm. He's Republican. because I think that my concern just isn't consistent with what they see of the GOP on the state level or local level, and I share with them that I'm very engaged with some aspects of what the party is doing, but I'm certainly vigilant of them because being a registrant of that party, then they carry the responsibility of bringing the public policies to fruition. As a constituent of theirs, then I need to make sure that they're serving the dynamic of myself. And I told every state GOP chair, I said, I didn't join the Republican Party so I could become more like you. I joined because I need you to become more like me. And that's my perspective on it. I live this life committed as anyone to, the life and livelihood, freedom, economics, equality, and justice of African people in this country. And that's something I was born on, and being taught to be very civically engaged as to those who are making the policies and the rules in this land so we can live and prosper. That I always felt that I could personally have an input, and I kind of interjected myself into the political sphere and pounced onto the Republican Party and made them acknowledge my voice. But I equally has been as committed and involved in the issues that's facing African Americans here in Philadelphia, and particularly our young men.
I think what really resonated with me is that you see your politics through the lens of a Black man and not the Black man through the lens of the politics. That is powerful. That reframes and centers really how this works. Your political affiliation does not trump your Blackness at all.
No. The politics are just a tool that every citizen in this country is given to utilize it and wield it, cajole it, influence it, support it, whatever. So all of those things are happening through my experience as a Black man. I'm Black in everything else. I'm a Black gun owner, which I'm proud of. I'm a Black Christian. I'm a Black consultant. So everything else is Black. So I don't know why the GOP should lead. That's not my governance in my life. Christ is my governance, and everything else, everything else in terms of civic engagement is that my measure in terms of how I approach it and deal with it is through my personal identity with Jesus Christ, my Blackness. I am Eva. I am the son of Eva and Raymond, and who they produce and what they felt that their child should represent. So all those things are coming in line before, in terms of those qualifiers or quantifiers of who I am, coming in line before I get down to being a Republican. But being the Black Republican, it certainly has highlight for other people, but to me, it's not something that distinguishes me. I think my my character and my will to be engaging is what in my work is what distinguishes me. But hey, if that put me to the front of the line because I'm Republican and if people put focus on me, then good. Because I think that I carry the similar mission of all of us, and particularly those who are engaged in the political sphere as African Americans. And we all have a responsibility in the village for the well-being of the village, and I certainly embrace that and honor that as an African man here. And African man.
One more question though about your work. I have one more little question, and it's not so little. I heard that you are very, very committed to helping African American men in our city get together and learn how to work together on so many issues. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the brother Johnson, Jamal, who just spoke, and I sent him a friend request, and he talked about the personal accountability in our community before he talked about the accountability of government, police, and all those things. So what I realized just in these halls of argument and political debate and discourse, and particularly electoral politics, that some of the men who are absent from those circles just isn't because of will. Some of them aren't prepared, and our African American men are under complete duress in this country, and our participation is waning in many aspects that's necessary in the community. So I was very fortunate. I have a circle of very, very close friends whom over my entire life that I've had friends who I could be completely transparent with. I could be completely vulnerable with. They give me great insight. They give me great encouragement. And so I thought of my circle of support from, non-family members as not a big deal. But when I go and I talk with men, and because, I talk with them, one time, a brother Muhammad, who with the fatherhood program, one time he announced me and he said something about me that really stuck with me. He said, Randy doesn't ask your permission to invest in you. He just does it. And I was like, wow. Because if it's something or somebody who I think is fighting the right fight, I'm going to just jump in a fight and start fighting with you. And then you might tap me on the shoulder, like, what's your name? Why are you here? Like, what's in it for you?
Right.
I'm like, you're in it. That's what's in it for me. That's why I'm in it. So I realized that a lot of men just don't have that circle of comfort and support and so I said, before we can give them the mission for the battle, we got to make sure that our soldiers are prepared. And I realized that Black men have just been hurting, distance from their community, distance from their relationships, distance in their family, overly engaged in criminality, undereducated, unemployed. I said, so before we can ask them to be great actors and participants, let's figure out what's going on with their soul. So I created a men's ministry, and I called it Conversations Amongst Kings. And it has no agenda. There's nothing to sign up for. It is just we get around and we talk, and we just talk about the things that are ailing our soul in terms of our existence here in Philadelphia. And I had Brother Seth Williams, and he came and gave a dynamic presentation. So I realized it is, what's at risk is the soul of Black men. Amen. And I said, well, I walk in a lot of circles and different dynamics. I think I had the ability to call just a different plethora and dynamic of men together, and they came out. And so we've been having these meetings every few months. But that's what it is, just a conversation amongst kings. It's just simply a ministry for our soul. And it's been extremely powerful because no one just thought to say, everybody can critique and rightly so our performance, but nobody just dug down and said, what was his level of preparation for the battle? And that's what I realized was missing. You can't judge us in this fight if we don't know our preparation for it. Yeah. And that's what I thought the basic level is, having a brother that you can just open up and talk with and share and realize that, hey, we're in this thing together. And my last point is that at our Conversations for Kings, I told them, I said, Black men, there's nobody rooting for us. There's nobody rooting for us. There's no Black male rooting system. I said, we got to root for one another. We got to be there for ourselves first. Yeah. So that's what and the hope is that everybody who participate goes out and create their own circle of kings where they can converse with and share their trials and tribulations and help build and restore their soul, so that we can get them back to the fight, because there's a lot of work to be done in our community and particularly in our streets related to violence and particularly gun violence.
So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to challenge all of the women that are strong followers of Heart City. I know I am rooting for Black men. Amen. And I ask that all of my sisters also acknowledge and tell our Black men that we are rooting for them. Don't just say
it is so important.
Demonstrate it. Show them the love that they so rightfully deserve, if for any other reason than they're the other half of us. And so I thank you. I truly do thank you for, these conversations with Black kings. And I think this is a perfect segue into the conversation that we need to have with Mr. Williams here, with Seth, because I think this is the accountability. Accountability a lot of times comes with being vulnerable enough and being able to trust the space that I can be accountable, but still be supported, even if I made some mistakes, right? And so, Seth, you recently in June, you penned a letter because, your accountability kept being questioned, and I think your record was being questioned. And this is not the season to even really, unless we're looking for ways to move forward, why are we looking backwards? And I think you brought up some very good points in your letter. You were quoted in Broad and Liberty as the title of your letter, was an open letter to the Philadelphia district attorney. And you asked him to, if he didn't have the right things to say, to, keep your name out your mouth. And I love that. I'm gonna be honest. I say that aloud. Keep my name out your mouth. Tell us why that letter was so important for you to write, and at this time.
Well, again, Ms. Chase, thank you for having me on, and I'm glad I'm on with one of my best friends, a guy who's been an authentic, a real friend to me, Mr. Randy R. Robinson. So I wrote that because I think I have a unique perspective as having been an assistant district attorney for 10.5 years, the inspector general, the elected district attorney of Philadelphia, a criminal defense attorney, a federal target, a federal inmate, and most importantly, an African-American man. All 55 years of my life, I've been Black. And what's important is that in the year 2021, Philadelphia had the most homicides in the history of the city. The city was founded by William Penn, I think in 1861, right? And we had more homicides than ever. I'm sorry, 1681. And of those homicides, right, about 90% are African-American men. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that we're killing ourselves.
Yeah.
My father would say that we put the KKK out of business.
We did.
All right. So if you back it up, when I was the district attorney, we had a lot of homicides. In 2012, there was 326 homicides. Mm-hmm. I knew that there was way too many. So I used empirical data to create community-based prosecution where the DAs work with the community, mirroring the police divisions to work with the police, the clergy, the communities, to get to know the community, to better serve the community.
Yeah.
I created a great partnership. I was very fortunate that Commissioner Charles Ramsey was the police commissioner of Philadelphia.
Yes.
Right? And I had a great partner in Mayor Nutter. Mm-hmm. We had 3 Black men. I would like to say strong Black men, but they were very strong Black men. Hopefully I just did my part. Mm-hmm. But the goal is that we have to be accountable. We have to call out people who bring harm to our community.
Yeah.
My Aunt Shirley and my mother, they would walk in Cobbs Creek Parkway, right, with big sticks. Not because the KKK was going to come rob them, but because Pookie and Man from Christian Street or Webster would try to take their purse.
Right.
But the lesson I learned was that my mother and my Aunt Shirley wanted those young men to be held accountable. Mm-hmm. But it's not the severity of punishment that changes behavior, it's the certainty. Okay? Yeah. So we have to reform the criminal justice system. But we also have to have safety. And those two things aren't one or the other. They have to take place simultaneously.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was taken out of office. I pled guilty to 1 count. The new district attorney is opposed to holding people accountable for gun violence.
Yeah.
He actually says that he is opposed to prosecuting people for the illegal possession of firearms because it criminalizes poverty. Right. Which is just insane. So my point is that you have these extremely liberal, progressive white people trying to tell Black people what's best for them. Yeah. No, we have to hold people accountable.
Right.
It doesn't.
So that goes right back to what Jamal stated.
Correct.
When he said there's a warning where this city is not safe for you, but it's not safe for those that live here either.
But see, so what I learned as the district attorney is that we did studies, we did the data, we did gun stat. The current DA eliminated community-based prosecution. He eliminated gun stat. He eliminated focused deterrence. So what he was saying is that, oh no, when Seth and the Mayor Nutter and Commissioner Ramsey drove homicides down, homicides were down everywhere. Right. Well, the truth is homicides were down about 4%. But we drove it down 25% in Philadelphia. Okay. through focused deterrence. What does that mean? There's a very small percentage of people anywhere that are violent criminals. It's about half of 1%.
Yeah.
So in Philadelphia, if we were to draw a Venn diagram, remember that from 7th grade?
I do. Yes. One circle here, and they come together in the middle.
Right. So one circle with those people most likely to get shot, and another circle with the people most likely to do the shooting. The intersection and the union of those two is about 75%. The fact is that we can identify geographically the times, the places, the people most likely to get shot. So if you get rid of all the programs and the strategies to reduce that, what you're telling me is that the young black and brown men do not care. They don't count to you. You don't care if the homicide rate is now the highest.
Yeah.
Right? So today we've already had 3 homicides as of 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay? We had 9 this weekend. We're up to 268 as of today, year to date. Now, mind you, Ms. Chase, in 2013, the total was 246
for the entire year. Yeah, for 365 days.
In 2014, the total was 248. So people, it's nice to say, let's bring in the National Guard. Okay, but there are things right now that the district attorney can do. We don't need the new laws. Now, yeah, it'd be good to change some laws in Harrisburg. Don't get me wrong. Right? But we have to, it begins by holding people accountable that carry guns illegally.
Yeah.
Right? No one that shot someone in Philadelphia with an illegal gun wasn't not possessing it a second before then. Right? So everyone that you stop and take the illegal gun away from them and hold them accountable has the potential, of course, to have that ripple effect stop of future harm.
So for those that believe that we should bring in the National Guard, they're truly fearful right now. And while on one hand, I'm like, is that really necessary? I do hear their point. How do you safely go to events like our Welcome Home America event on the Parkway and not feel scared? How do you go to a Dune Day and not feel scared in our current moment?
Again, I like Randy, I had to surrender all things to God. And you know, but at the same time, we have to pray for safety and peace, but we have to work every day to improve the quality of life also. So we have to ask God to give us the ability, the wisdom, the courage to do the right thing daily. Right. And so, but I'm fortunate. My daughters, they went to see the fireworks out in Narberth. So I didn't have to worry about were they going to be a part of a stampede.
So I can tell you this, I mean, just particularly with a Dune Day, which I did go to, and I would just say for the record, I am a pro-black gun ownership, legal gun owner, and I want sensible gun laws. I can still carry almost everywhere I go. But I can tell you this though, I went to a Dune Day. I had no sense whatsoever of fear of violence, and I'll tell you why. What was unique about the Dune Day Festival? The Dune Day Festival, you saw, I think what Brother Jamal was getting to. And I think as a last resort, he's saying bringing the National Guard. He's talking about this black presence, particularly of men being visible in the community. And at a Dune Day, it was the only festival and only opportunity of large gathering here in Philadelphia where I saw multi-generations of black men. Yeah. I saw grandfathers, I saw sons, I saw the children, I saw, I've seen as many black men with their mate and their children as single black women walking around. I think you got guys who are this cultural, corporate, community, hood. It was a join in every dynamic, every aspect, and every presentation of blackness, and particularly black men, was at a Dune Day. And I think with that, because those who are criminal look for spaces where they can either shock and make everyone afraid, blend in, or get away, or just move in and move out. And at a Dune Day, it was like everybody there, like we recognize one another. So and not only we recognize one another, we recognize our standing and our point and purpose. So you add that with a very fair police presence, and there were African American officers. So at a Dune Day, and I looked at it and I was like, wow, you know what? I thought about that dynamic, and I said, it is the presence of multi-generations of Black men and Black men who look different from every. So if you're there with criminal intent, you didn't know who would be the threat, who would be respond, who, like, somebody know me, or that. So I think that aspect of comfort that those who are meaning ill will in the community, that presence in that diaspora of Blackness and joy and happiness didn't present that to him. So Dune Day was one of the most most recent public gatherings of large numbers of folks that I'd gone to, but I went there joyfully and without fear, because I just saw the faces. I'm like, the young guys who were just there, who sagged their pants, or those who were wearing dashiki, or those who were artists, or those who were vendors, we were all on the same accord, like, hey, brother, what's going on? So I think it demonstrated a point that I make about our Black men, is that and our Black women, is that they don't feel seen or heard or cared about. And at a Dune Day, it was quite the reverse of the feeling and spirit. It was like, brother, we uplift and honor you, and this is about you. So even those who are doing harm, or young boys who are beefing on corners, everybody want a respite from it. They're in pain from this whole constant concern for their lives too. Imagine the stress level that I can't go more than 3 blocks from my neighbor, from my block, or I might be killed. So everybody's looking for a space where they can just woosah. And I think the spirit of a Dune Day provided that platform. That's why there was no violence there. I anticipated it. I think it has a secret ingredient to some of the things that we need to replicate in our community, which is the presence of multi-generational Black men and Black men from different walks of life. They're saying, hey, I'm here. I recognize us. I care. And I think that could quell a lot of the things that are happening, particularly the crime rate in Seth know better than I. But you got crime that's happening from people, young, and particularly our young people, who aren't necessarily criminals. They just have poor conflict resolution skills, and their whole dynamic is the result, and that they're so fragile that any threat or offense, and they rather kill somebody than be embarrassed. And so that speaks to the fragility of the community, and that can only be quelled. Our young Black men, that insecurity can only be quelled by the presence of Black men that look like them, Black men that don't look like them, in a city and a system that says that you matter and you care.
And Seth, during your term, there was a lot of youth programs happening to keep our young people off of the street. Beacon centers, out of school time programs, PALs were running and going. How do we begin? How does the community, what can we do to tell our mayor, to tell our DA what we need and really hold them accountable? Is that possible? Is there another path towards that? But how do we get them to activate those types of things for us?
Well, I think that's a great question, Ms. Chase. And of course, again, as Reverend Boyd said at the very beginning, there's no 10 points that are going to solve everything. We have to have this is a public health crisis. So we have to treat it as we treated the pandemic. And that's how you started. We have to have a holistic approach, right? Everything from the rec centers, of course, to the libraries, to the community, to people like Mr. Johnson walking out, so that kids on the street say, you know what? Somebody cares about us, right? So you need that as well. You need the multi-generational concern that Mr. Robinson was speaking of. But again, what I wrote in that article, I wrote that a vacuum created by the absence of legitimate authority is always filled by illegitimate authority. Yeah. So when you do not have the government, the legitimate authority, holding people accountable for walking around with guns illegally, They don't hold people accountable for retail theft unless you steal more than $1,000 now. When there's a vacuum of legitimate authority, it's filled by illegitimate authority. So people just start doing whatever they want. People start taking the law in their own hands, like Mr. Robinson said. People just go start shooting everybody. Right on South Street, it wasn't really a mass shooting. It was just a couple of guys shooting at each other that couldn't shoot straight and shot everybody else.
Exactly. And a good 4-H program could help them with target.
Right.
With your focus.
So I have one recommendation I think that government can actually really hone in on to kind of quell the violence. The violence I see for our young people, particularly these teenage shooters who are, the fact of the matter, they all live at home with their parents and moms. They're not like some road gang knocking off banks and on the run. These kids go home that most of them probably, have to wake up in the morning and cry to their mom that where's all the milk? Because I need milk for my cereal. Their parents or foster parents, they're paying for their sneakers. They don't even pay their cell phone bills, but they're shooters. So I see with them is that a sense of hopelessness and despair. And the greatest generator of hopefulness outside the context of family and community is a quality public education, the schools. Because if you're in a community and you born into a socioeconomic condition that says you're trapped on a bottom rung, what is your opportunity to rise up and out of there? It is in education. But our schools are punitive systems that are sitting back with the knowledge that Black and brown boys by 5th grade, we can calculate that half of them will not graduate high school. So what you're saying is that you're openly allowing half of them to be ravaged by the streets. So our kids, our young boys in K-8, they're over punished, over the school system is more punitive than loving spirit. So they become discouraged learners. So guess what? They become not discouraged from learning. They become discouraged of going to school because they don't see how my performance in grade school gets me to a good high school, which gets me into a good college, which gets me into a career. That pathway is not that's not a pathway that makes sense to them, that they acknowledge, because they don't see the usefulness of school. Because at the K-8 level in Philadelphia, we have too many schools that are leaving those boys behind and discouraging them as learners. So guess what? That mind, he's going to learn. He doesn't go to school. That doesn't mean that he stopped learning. So he's either going to learn in school or he's going to learn in the streets. And guess what? The streets is all embracing. It's all love. Come on, bro. It's all good. And that's what attracts them. So we got to get our school systems to have more of a spirit of lovingness and support of these Black boys so that we could diminish the despair and hopelessness. And that once I got something to wake up for, I got a job, I can't hang on a corner, that's going to eradicate the large numbers of those who have fallen into the criminal justice system. We gotta eradicate hope and despair. And the public school right now is the greatest container of kids of that age, and we got to address that. We can no longer in our community and rise up and say that they can't allow a poor performing school to exist in my community. Because this are two things I know. Bad schools don't exist in good neighborhoods because the good neighborhood wouldn't allow for it.
Correct.
But guess what? You can have a phenomenal school in a bad neighborhood because the neighborhood knows that school is the opportunity for our way out.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think there a lot of what I'm hearing is that we need to be present. And Seth, when you said to us, about the proper, I want to make sure I get this correctly.
A vacuum created by the absence of legitimate authority.
That one. Thank you, sir.
Is always
I'm trying not to write you. Yes.
Is always filled by illegitimate authority.
That's what I'm saying.
I think it's important for our audience to understand what that means. We see that on so many levels. You see that in homes when there's an absence of a parent parenting, who steps in and begins to parent.
Right.
There's an absence of educators educating. Who steps in and becomes the educator? Brother Robinson just showed us, or just demonstrated verbally, what that looks like. That's when the street steps in. But when we also have it in a criminal justice system,
right,
then we have a chaotic city, and we have a city full of gun violence. And this is not a quick and easy solution. I want to just touch on one last thing before I let you gentlemen go. We had our mayor, and after the frustration of Monday events, the shooting of the officers at the Welcome America event, he verbalized his frustration and his desire or interest in this term being done. He's tired. And Malik and I touched on this a little bit earlier. We talked a little bit about, where do we extend grace for those in leadership that do get to their wits' end? How can we support our leadership, but still hold them accountable for what we need? Because they are our leaders. We need them.
If I can go first, because I'm sure Seth is going to have something far more poignant
I don't know
to make on this than me. So I'm going to say my piece and get out the way. First of all, I just wanted to give this praise to God and thankfulness for the safety and health of both of those officers, and particularly Sergio Diggs, whom I know personally. I know that brother, and I can tell you this: you would not meet a more beautiful, kind spirit person as him, and particularly for him to work in the line of work that he does, and to have that spirit about him really is something very special. So I was overjoyed to hear that the blessings allow for him to be able to continue and live a healthy life and continue doing the work that he does with the police force. But secondly to that point, the road is hard. This ain't easy work.
Right.
So, I mean, while we all personally can have grace and understood, because I think his soul and his spirit spoke out loud, and before he realized what his mind said, he said, "I'm weary and I'm tired, and this is too much for me. It is not the situation that I anticipated." And then you look across the country, post the pandemic shutdown, you have the largest number of mayors actually just not seeking re-election, because the weight and the totality of it all in terms of this world pandemic that we experienced had really taken its toll on those who are in those executive offices on the local level. So it's not him in terms of enduring the mental and emotional and psychological stress of the job. It has been consistent across the country. So I get it. I understand it. I feel it. And again, I pray for his wellness and his soul to be healed. Correct. However, there's a responsibility and accountability we got to be. You got to be ready for the fight. And no one says it's going to be easy. And I think that if in fact that he's not ready and prepared, I think he's wanting, but I'm not sure where his will is. Does he have the will to do it? And it's too critical of a space that we have someone, a leader, an executive officer leader, CEO of our city, and people are questioning his commitment to the battle. I think by doing that, he kind of jaundiced the rest of his administration. So I mean, those his term is up in a year and a half, and those who are seek political expediency or political opportunity or whatsoever going to jump on the bandwagon and say X, Y, Z. But and demand that he resign. I think he should resign for two reasons. Number one, I think that he doesn't owe his soul to it. He owes it to his family. And if his soul is weary, and then let it go. Seek your peace, brother. You've done your part. Move aside. And secondly, the fact that the battle is too intense that to not have a leader that we can count on. I think he's just undermined his ability to govern. And we see examples of others around the country who are facing the same circumstances, but have a different spirit and will for the battle. And I think Philadelphia deserves that.
Thank you. Seth, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if I can add much more to what Mr. Robinson just stated. I can say, though, personally, that I am very fortunate that as an unfortunate result of my incarceration, I have a much deeper faith in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And I wish I had that while I was the district attorney. I was always a believer, went to church probably 3 Sundays out of the month my whole life. But the truth is that I was prepared operationally and strategically to become the district attorney of Philadelphia and to supervise an office of 600 people and over 75,000 cases a year. I was not aware of the emotional toll, the toll on my heart that it would take. Going to the trauma center and being there with Mayor Nutter and Commissioner Ramsey when Sergeant Robert Wilson III had been shot in the head and his body multiple times. I'm in the trauma unit, or in the trauma unit when the building had collapsed on 2 firefighters, and I'm there. Going to funerals for children and having to speak without even having an advance notice, or having to console people who came to my office whose kids had been murdered, or having to look at the photographs for capital cases and having to determine whether or not we should ask for the death penalty or not. I wasn't prepared for all that. So part of me recognizes and appreciates the toll on the heart and soul of a person who was my friend, Jim Kenney. I understand it's a very small fraternity of people that understand that daily everything is on you and that you're always on. The cameras are always on you. People are watching everything you do. When I would go to take my kids to get ice cream at Baskin and Robbins and they would start acting out, people want to see, well, how's he going to treat his kids? Is he going to smack him upside the head like Mrs. Williams would have done when he was a boy? Or is he going to use some sort of timeout Quaker, So I understand it. I think it was a clarion call, as Mr. Robinson said, for his own mental health. He's fed up, tired. I get it. But from a leadership standpoint, it's not something that you can say. And that's what the tension is for the people that are in elected office, because who do you talk to? You can't even talk to people on your political staff because they're on your staff this week, and next week they're working for the enemy, the opposition. But you don't know who to trust.
So where's the king circle for those in that special
almost
fraternity?
Nowhere. But again, the statement that he can't wait until he's out of office when he has another year and a half is terrible for all the municipal employees, right? For all the police who have to go to work every day, they can't say that, or the firefighters, or the sanitation workers, or the SEPTA employees, right? School teachers who are underfunded and they're getting screamed at and stuff thrown at them in their schools. It's bad for business. It's bad for tourism. But I get it. I understand the frustration. It was just very unfortunate that it happened that way. But it's something that people, for the most part, have been thinking that he's checked out since the summer of 20.
So for those who may not understand or know, if our mayor steps down and resigns, help them understand who steps in, because the election is not right there.
Right. So unlike the United States, where we were governed by the U.S. Constitution as well as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia in 1947 enacted the Home Rule Charter. And so the Home Rule Charter is what is like the playbook, the governing book for our city. We had a county of Philadelphia and a city, and they merged into one. And in Philadelphia, if the mayor, either as a result of incapacitation, permanently or temporarily, steps down, dies in office, runs for another office, then the city council president fills the unexpired term of the mayoral term. And then city council votes to reorganize itself as to who their new president would be, majority leader, and all that stuff. So by the Home Rule Charter, it's the president of council.
So that's a long way of saying Darrell Clark would be mayor.
I was just about to say that. Thank you, sir. And I think that's really important, because I think sometimes we request things without understanding. And I'm not saying that Darrell Clark couldn't be an amazing mayor for the city or step in a time that we may need, but at the same time, we need to understand when we call for certain action, what does that mean and what is up next for us. And so these are not just, while our mayor made a very knee-jerk emotional statement that really may be true. And I believe, like both of you, that this is a call, a clarion call for this man. And I do pray for him, because it has to be challenging, but we should understand how this all works together. I want to thank you both. This has been a great conversation. We've already gone 15 minutes over, and my amazing executive producer did not even send me a message or a chat. So that's how I know this was the conversation that we needed. I would like to, just on air, ask you gentlemen to come back, because I think there's more to this conversation. I really would like to, while there's not a 10-point plan, and I get that, and I think many of our audience understands that, I do believe that there is more that we can do and more that our community can step in and help activate. I thank you both for your time, your service. Randy, thank you so much for the clarity that you provided tonight around just how we, how our men need to activate, how our men need to be supported in order for them to activate. And I thank you for the work. I thank you for stepping in for them without them even asking your permission.
Yes.
And I appreciate that on their behalf. And Seth, thank you so much. You are an amazing friend to Heart City, always coming in and giving such insight, and you make things so plain and clear for us. And I appreciate that. Our audience has enjoyed their time with you both. Andre McLean has been in our chat all evening, and we thank you, Arande.
Phenomenal brother. Good brother.
For sticking around. He said, wow, this was a great show that should be published and let the whole Philadelphia see. I appreciate the Heart Show. I believe he meant Heart City, and the guests that gave me hope to push forward. That was really the first step in activation today. We are feeling hopeless right now, and I really desire for us to get that back so that we can get into gear and get ready for the fight, because there's a long fight ahead. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. I look forward to being back on again.
Yes, I'll have you soon.
All right. Take care.
Guys, this has been an amazing, amazing show. Heart City, we work really hard behind the scene to try to pull all the pieces together and make it as tasty or palatable as it could possibly be. And that's not always easy to do, especially on challenging topics like this. I thank you all for sticking it out with us this extra 17 minutes, but it was so well worth it. The information that was shared, the encouragement that we received. I pray for our city. I pray daily for our city. And I know that many of you do, but we all know, and we've been told many, many times, that faith without works is dead. And it is time for us to take our faith and activate that into work. What does that mean for you? That means for us to figure out what our individual role is and how can we make a difference? How can we help our communities feel safer? That's just for us. And then on top of that, we have the job of keeping our political officials, our elected officials, our community organization that received funding to help us address this pandemic of gun violence in our city. Keep them accountable, support them, give them what they need, but also keep them accountable. Mayor Kenney, we are praying for you. We understand the challenges that you are, that have been placed upon you. And that is not an easy thing to say on air, but do know that here at Heart City, we are always praying for your success, because your success is our success. And we want what's best for you as well as our city. Heart City family, this has been a great time. I've enjoyed my time back on air, and I'm looking forward to being back with you next week. As always, remember to support Heart City. And how do you do that? We want you to like, subscribe, and share our shows. Arande McLean said it best. This show needs to be seen, so share it on Facebook. This is Heart City TV. I'm Kendall Chase, and welcome home. Good night.